Hello, and thanks for having me in this class. I'm very excited to teach a class today on protocols.io and the art of writing methods. I wanted to quickly introduce myself. As Kawai mentioned, my name is Anita Broellochs. I'm the head of outreach at protocols.io. I joined protocols.io about 2 years ago now, and before that I was studying life science engineering at the Friedrich-Alexander University in Erlangen, Germany. And there I was doing work on optical clearing techniques for skeletal muscle tissue for multiphoton microscopy. And yeah, since about 2 years I've been with protocols.io, and I'm excited to teach this class to you all today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat. I'll try to look at the questions during the presentation, but also I have some breaks for specific Q&A, so we can look into questions during those parts of the presentation also. And our agenda for today's class is, first we'll start with taking a look at the assignment. I think y'all got the assignment that I submitted, so we'll take a look at that first, and then I will give you a quick introduction to protocols.io. So I'll talk a little bit about the mission of protocols.io and some core functionality. And then here we'll have a break for QA. So if you have any questions about protocols.io, you can ask them there. And then our third part of today's class, I call it the art of writing methods, or the art of writing protocols. And because really, if you are developing a method and if you're like writing a new method, sometimes it can be trickier than it might sound at first. So there's actually a lot of things to consider if you want to write a good reproducible method. So I'll be covering some best practices, and I'll show you some examples of what good methods look like, or how to really make your methods, how really to write methods in a way that they're understandable for others and they're reproducible. And then our fourth part of today's class will be a hands-on using protocols.io part. So at the end, we'll actually do some things with protocols.io, and you'll have a chance to create your own protocols. But so these are kind of like the main kind of things that you'll notice a lot of times in the materials and method sections of papers. And the problem there's really a problem on the way how we communicate methods, and that also leads to that oftentimes it's actually very, very hard and difficult to repeat or build on previously published work. And the reason for that is the lack of really detailed recipes describing how the research and experiments were performed, because if you don't know how something was done, it's really difficult to actually reproduce the results, right? And so our mission really with protocols.io is to solve this issue a little bit. And our mission is to make it really easy for anybody to share method details at really any time. So before publication, during, and after publication. And I will just now give you a little bit of an overview of what protocols.io is and how we solve that. And so protocols.io really is a platform for protocols or methods. It's really like a central place where people can come and they can collaborate on methods, and they can share methods. You can share methods privately or make them public. If you make them public, you can even get a DOI for your methods. So it's really like a method-centered collaboration platform. And the platform, the key insights, like the main things that we really want to enable people to do with protocols.io is we want to really make it easy for you to manage and share research data and protocols. And also there are a lot of functionality that really can allow you to simplify teamwork and really just improve collaboration, because we'll be much better at communicating method details. And on the long run, if you do use protocols.io to organize your methods, it can save you time and really can help you to keep all your work organized, because not only is there a problem for the way that methods are presented in the publications, in the papers, but also if you look into like groups, oftentimes in teams, there's like it's not really a structured way. So some people might have like paper lab notebooks and have their protocols written out there. Some people might use Google Docs and have a document there. Some people have like a Word document and then they share it with each other through email. But it's really hard to actually keep track of versions and just like know where everything is. So with protocols.io, really you can keep everything in a central place and really just collaborate on one platform. And our two main products really are, we have the a protocol repository that is all open access. Right now there are about 7,000 public protocols in it, and it's always free. So if you're sharing publicly, it's always free, and you can publish your protocols with a DOI. But then also, if you do want to keep things private, we also have a private site, and that's a paid side of protocols.io. So if you want to keep it a lot for private collaboration, you can keep things private as well. And that's our premium workspaces. But for the public side, for the repository, as I mentioned, there are about 7,000 public protocols and it's all open access. So if you come to protocols.io and you want to search for methods, you can just come and start searching. You don't even need to create an account or anything to view the public content. And there's a large diversity of disciplines. So we really do welcome all kind of research methods. We do have so we have a lot of biology, of course, but also people using it for chemistry, even for computational workflow. So if you're working on computational things, you can put your computational workflows together. So you can even add command lines and provide the data sets that you use and those kind of things. And also people are starting to use it for clinical trials. And really there's a very broad diversity of disciplines. And we'll take a look at the protocols that are available on protocols.io at the end of this session. So we will actually take a look at the platform. But if you do look at protocols on protocols.io, one thing you'll notice is that the protocols are not static PDFs, but are interactive and dynamic protocols. So what that means is, as you can see here, this is what a typical protocol looks like. And one thing you'll notice is, excuse me. One thing that you'll notice that protocols are entered in a step-by-step description. So rather than having one long, hard to understand text block, you'll notice that there are like individual steps. And then the steps can be grouped into sections. So here, this is just the first section, but if you would scroll down, and this is a screenshot, so I can't scroll down, but you'll notice that there are different sections. And then also up here, you can see there's different tabs. So this is like the steps. This is the main part of the method, but then there's like a little abstract where it's just the person who's submitting this protocol, they can just put the protocol into context and just let everybody know what this protocol is about. And then there's room for general guidelines, warnings. You can add very detailed materials with RRIDs. And really there's just like a lot of room to just add all the necessary detail to your protocol. And then if you do make your protocol public, as I mentioned before, you can get a DOI, and the DOI is oftentimes included in materials and methods sections in the papers. So if you're publishing a paper, and you want to include a link to your very detailed method to protocols.io, you can include your DOI. So a lot of times you'll notice that papers still say, so the materials and methods section really is like an abstract to the method itself. So it will just explain really briefly what the method is about, and then authors will put something like a detailed method of this protocol is available on protocols.io, and then they'll link out to this DOI. And another functionality that I want to point out here is we have like a commenting functionality on every protocol, and that is really to discuss the method. So there's like, you can either add comments to a method on a protocol level. So if there's any questions, suggestions, or comments that you have on a protocol as a whole, you can add protocol level comments, or you can add comments to a particular step. So if here, for example, you want to know why on step 1 they do this at why they need to do it at room temperature, you could ask like, why is it room temperature? Or like, what do you do 20 degrees, minus 20 degrees in step 2? So you could add like a comment on that specific step. And then even protocols, since they do have this nice step-by-step format, you can even, excuse me, you can even run them on the web or mobile. So you can even have like this, we have this checklist like functionality where you can actually run protocols and kind of like step through every single step. And then everything that you do there gets a timestamp. And then in the end, you have like a protocol record. So it's kind of like an electronic lab notebook record. And you can do that either on a computer or, and we have free Android and iOS apps too. So you could even do it on a phone or tablet when you're in the lab and you're following a method. And really the 3 key elements of the protocols.io platform are our file manager. This is where everything happens. This is where all your files and all your protocols are stored. And then the workspaces where people come together to collaborate. And then the editor. So if you're actively creating protocols, you'll do that through our editor. And today I want to just quickly touch on all 3 of these aspects and just explain a little bit more what these functionalities and these elements do. And first I want to start with workspaces. So the workspaces really, as I mentioned, are a virtual room where everybody who's collaborating on one topic, they can meet, and this can be either for like small teams. You could even have like 2 or 3 people only, or it can be big consortiums where you have a couple hundred people, or like on specific topics. So it's really, it can be from like as little as like 2 people to up to like a couple hundred or even thousands if you needed to. So there's really a large like spectrum of what you can do with workspaces. And the workspaces are just great because everything is in one place. You can share files with others. And if you do use it for internal teams, you can even use other things. Like we have these team functionalities, like we have a fully integrated task manager. So you can like manage people's tasks if you're using it for one lab, and you have a reagent manager. So you can log all the reagents that are available in one lab and things like that, and just keep track of everything. And the workspaces, if you're setting up a workspace, you'll notice that there are 2 different types. One is, we call it visible workspaces, and one is invisible workspaces. And that just means like some of the workspaces, they're public. So you'll see a public facing profile, and they publish protocols. But then also there are invisible workspaces. So if somebody keeps things private, they'll use invisible workspaces. And you'll notice on these little icons if you're part of a workspace, if it's like a public or if it's a private workspace. And then the workspaces, they do come with team administration. So for example, if you are setting up a workspace for a team, if you want to make sure that the work stays in a team, because oftentimes if somebody's working in a team and then one day they leave the team, the work leaves with them. So if you want to make sure that work doesn't leave with the person if the person leaves, you can do that by, for example, say I want to prevent from removing files. So that means anything that's being put into the group will stay there even if a person will leave. So, and there are, I did want to mention a couple public workspaces here that are NIDDK relevant workspaces, and we'll take a look at these later too when we actually use protocols.io, but I just wanted to link them here. And I think we'll share the slides too, so you'll have those links afterwards. But there are a lot of relevant workspaces, and I think when we take a look at the protocols that are available, I think everybody should be able to find something that's interesting for them. And then next is the file manager. So as I mentioned, the file manager is really where everything happens. So this is where all your protocols will be stored if you're creating protocols, but also it does support any other file type. So if you have any other files that you want to store here or share with others, you can add any other files like spreadsheets or PDFs or anything like that, you can add it. And the file manager really has all the commands that you need. So it allows for archiving, auditing, exporting. You can connect to Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, and Box. And the file manager does have enterprise grade security and a lot of backup functionality. So this is a quick look inside the file manager. As I mentioned, here's are like your protocols, and you just have the option to create different folders, just like in any other file manager, to just organize the space however you would like it to be organized. And then if you click on a protocol, for example, if I have a protocol here, this right-hand sidebar will open up, and here you can do just everything that you might need to be doing with a protocol. So you can edit it, you can publish it even from here, you can share it with others, you can run it. So anything really that you might need to do with a protocol, you will do through the file manager. And then our editor. So if you're creating protocols, and we will be creating protocols at the hands-on part, but the editor is really great for creating your protocols. And one of the things I want to point out here are the components that it comes with. And the components I'll show you in a second too. But the components are really great to just highlight the important details of your method. And also if you do use the run functionality, they can be extremely useful. So for example, if you use an amount component, the protocol will be scalable. So if, for example, you say, I would need 2 milliliters of this reagent, if you want to scale it, for example, if you scale it by 3, it will say you need 6 milliliters of this reagent, right? So this can be very useful. Or if you have like timers, there will be automatic timers that start. And then the editor does come with granular editing history. That's particularly great if you're using our concurrent editing functionality and you're working on a document or a protocol with others at the same time. You can see exactly which changes have been made to the protocol and when. And then, as I mentioned in the very beginning, it allows you to create that nice step-by-step format of the method. So you can really create these individual steps, and you can group different steps into sections, and you can have like color-coded section labels to just really make your method very nicely formatted and for others easy to understand. This is a quick look inside the editor, but as I mentioned, we'll take a look at this on your screen at the end. But here are, on the right-hand side, are the components that I mentioned, and here you can see the color-coded sections. You can even have like step icons. So if you need to do pipetting, you can add that. If you have like an incubation, you can add a little incubator. And then for the components, yeah, we do have a lot of wet lab components, but also for computational work, we have all these computational components too. So like a command, you can link out to your software, you can add data sets and things like that. And then once you created a protocol, so every time you create a protocol, it always starts out private. So you're the only person who can see it. And then it's up to you when you want to share it, how you want to share it, and with who you want to share it. And you can either share protocols privately or you can make them public, but they always start out private. And if you want to share it privately with others, you can share it with either individuals or you can share it with an entire group. So it's really up to you who you want to share it with. And then you can give different editing permissions to people too. So you can say this person or this group should only be able to view a protocol, or maybe you want to allow them to also go in and edit a protocol. So it's really up to you which kind of permissions you want to give to who. And once you shared a protocol with others, even if it's privately or publicly, either way, the commenting, as I mentioned before, is really great to just discuss a method. So others can add comments to your protocol, and then the discussion really happens right there on the protocol itself. And if there's a couple things that probably that might need to be updated after a while, or that changed that need to be optimized, one of the nicest functionalities I think we have on protocols.io is the versioning. So at any time you can make a new version of a protocol. So if it's a private protocol or a public protocol, doesn't matter, you can always create new versions. And that's really nice to just keep track of the different versions. And if you're working in a group, another thing that's very nice is if, for example, here I have version 1 of this protocol, and then I have version 2. If I shared version 1, if I shared the version 1 link with a colleague of mine, because they're working with that, and then in the meantime, I create version 2 and it's shared with the same group, if they go to version 1, they all get this little pop-up that lets them know that there's a newer version of this protocol available. So this is really great to just make sure that everybody always knows what the latest version is and what they should be using. And then of course we do preserve all the older versions too. And then there's a compare functionality even that allows you to basically put both protocol versions next to each other, and then it kind of highlights the differences. But yeah, the version control is really nice. And then of course, as I mentioned, it's really easy to export your files at any time. You can go into your file manager and just export entire folders to your computer, or Dropbox, Google Drive, Box, or OneDrive, or you can also export individual protocols as well, if you want to print it, for example. And I want to finish off this part, which is saying that there are a lot of organizations right now encouraging the use of protocols.io. That includes a lot of journals and publishers are recommending protocols.io on manuscript submission guidelines. There are more than 500 journals that add us to their author guidelines. And then there are also a number of funders requiring or recommending protocols.io in grant guidelines or policies. And then also more and more institutions are getting campus-wide licenses to just ensure more reproducible research and publications from their campuses. So now we will get into the third agenda item here, which I called the art of writing methods. And I wanted to start with this little thing of, it's from an article that somebody wrote, and this is very exaggerated, of course, but here somebody said, they say if you would compare really the method section of a paper to, if you were to describe a method on how to draw an owl, the method section of a paper would look like this, what I circled here in pink. It would say, we draw the owl on a 60.2 GMS white paper of the A4 dimension using 3H and 6B graphite pencils. We did so by looking at owls and drawing what we saw on paper. This protocol yielded one drawn owl. And here are like the 2 steps. So basically they say draw the circles and then just draw the rest. And of course this is very, very exaggerated, but oftentimes, and I mean all of you looked at the method sections, oftentimes that's a little bit true. So it's kind of like, it sounds like something fancy, but then if you actually trying to do this yourself, there's a lot of information missing here. And I think some of you or all of you might have done a little exercise already where you were given, I think Anita might have done this with you, where you were given instructions on how to draw SpongeBob without knowing that it's SpongeBob. And then everybody has the same instructions, but usually if we do this exercise, we get as many different results as there are people in the room. And really what I want to highlight here is that even if you share a protocol, so even if you do put a protocol on protocols.io, just because you shared something, if you didn't put an effort into writing a recipe in a way that others can follow it, doesn't mean that people can use it. So what I just want to say here is that if you're sharing something, really you should put thought into it and really make sure that it's useful for others, and that others can actually follow the method. And now I want to just walk you through my best practices really for writing reproducible methods. And this is really just a really brief checklist kind of thing. But if you do keep these things in mind when you're writing methods, I think you're already very good in making sure that it is as reproducible as possible for others. And so one thing that's actually very important is that the method should be always digital. So if you're using paper notebooks in the lab, still make sure that your methods are digital, because if you have paper lab notebooks, if somebody wants to find that later, it will be really hard. So make sure it's digital. And yeah, so paper lab notebooks are in use since the 15th century, and they're great because like they have been in use, and it's really good for just like documenting your work, and if you have any IP, you can make sure you have it all. But there are a couple issues with paper lab notebooks. Like one is, for example, it's not searchable. So if you ever try to find something in somebody else's paper lab notebook, or maybe even your own, it's really, really difficult. And also they can easily be damaged, they can be misplaced, and it's not easy to back it up. And also it's very hard to share with others. So if somebody wants to know how you did something, if you want to share it with collaborators, you need to like scan the pages, or you need to, I don't know how to do it, or take photos. So it's really hard to actually share things. And if your protocols are digital, it just makes it a lot easier because one, you can search easily for things, you can embed high resolution images, you can export the data as PDF at any time, and you can really share it with others, you can access it from all over the world, and also you can use your phone to really quickly just add things and add comments. And then the next tip here is think of a protocol as a brief, modular, and self-contained scientific publication, because that's really what it is. So really make sure that you think about it, and just like that it's like a whole package, and that everything is there that's important. One thing that's really, really important is to put a little abstract. And as we saw that before, protocols.io gives you the opportunity to put an abstract. And I think abstracts are really, even if it's just like 3 sentences, it's really, really helpful to just put your method into context. And that's helpful for anybody who might pick up your method, or even if you pick up your method again in 10 years from now, it will be really helpful for you to put an abstract to just let the reader know what this method is about. And then also try to include as much detail as possible. So everything that might be critical information, like duration for things and reagent amounts, the vendors, catalog numbers, RIDs, images, videos, anything really that helps to really capture all the necessary detail. Make sure you put it into your method. And another thing that's very important is that the steps are in a chronological order. And oftentimes in the papers, in the materials and methods sections of papers, we realize that it seems like the steps are actually not in a chronological order. So they'll write something like, oh, we did this and this previously to this and this, and it's like a whole mess. So make sure it's like nice, like chronologically in order. And also try to limit jargon. So if it's you don't need to try to make it sound fancy or anything, or try to put something in there that makes it sound like something new. Like just try to make it really clear and use an active voice, just letting the reader know what to do. And yeah, it's really good to just make it very, I think it's better to use an easy to understand language, because also maybe some other parts of this world, if you use any like complicated language, it might make it very difficult for others to understand. So really, if you add a clear language, and maybe even images that speak for themselves and videos, that will be really helpful. And then this is just more for if you're publishing protocols and protocols.io, try to add keywords. So because that really makes your method more discoverable for others. And then also, if you have any additional notes or recipes or tips and tricks, you can add that there. Like a lot of times there's might be like this little tweak that you know because you have worked with that method and you know like, oh, I have to do this here and there, but in a paper you might never even like mention that because you think, oh, it's probably obvious for others. But if there's something that took you a while to figure out, it's definitely will be helpful for others to know that. So if there's anything else that you can let the reader know, that would be really helpful. And once you're done writing your method, one thing that's really good is to get feedback from others. So maybe you can just give it to like a friend or a colleague. And ideally that would be somebody who might not be working with the same method. So they might not have used that method before. And if you just get feedback from them and you ask them like, hey, if I gave you this method and I put you in a lab, would you be able to follow it? Or is there anything that's unclear that you don't understand? You might be very surprised of what kind of feedback you get. So that's very, very helpful to just ask others for their feedback. And now I just have some examples of what the good method details look like. As I mentioned here, you can see like just a short abstract, like really can just be a couple sentences. It's really helpful. And then clear step description. So here you can see most of the steps are actually only one line long. So it's really easy to follow. It's very, very clear steps. And it's better to have more steps and clearer steps than like less steps and harder to understand steps. And then images and videos, as I mentioned, are very, very great. And I have two examples here. On the left side, it's one of our users. She's making these protocols and she adds like these graphics to it, and she actually makes them just simply with PowerPoint. And here, for example, she wants to let the reader know how to cut like this cassava shoot because it needs to be cut in like the specific angle. So she add like these images of how to cut this, and she has a lot more of these, but that just makes it really, really clear. And even if somebody might not have like the best English skills, they'll know like from just looking at this image what's meant, you know, so it really can help. And then on the right side here, this is actually a video. So this is somebody, they published a protocol, and then step 3 here, it says grind tissue. So it's like a tissue grinding step, and he got so many comments on that and people asking like how to exactly do this. So now he just published a new version where he actually included this little video where he just had a lab mate film him do this grinding step, and they just included that. Excuse me. So yeah, if you just take videos, and it doesn't have to be really high quality videos, you can just really use your cell phone to record little videos. But it's just so powerful, and it really can help others to understand what you were actually doing, and they can reproduce what you were doing more easily. And then this is what the detailed reagents look like. So as I mentioned, you can link out to the catalog, you can put a vendor. This one does not have RIDs, but I'll show you how you can also add RIDs for things. Then you can add the very detailed equipment that you're using for the method, because oftentimes the equipment actually matters too. So there are methods, if you use a different type of shaker, then it could actually like destroy the method and it cannot work anymore. So the equipment is very important as well. And then last, as I mentioned, if you're publishing, just make sure you add keywords, because on protocols.io, if somebody's searching for your method, we do scan the protocol title, the abstract, and the keywords. So anything that's not in there, it won't bring it up. So if you add those things, it will make it easier for your method to pop up and others to find your method. And here's just a quick, again, like a reproducible method checklist. Feel free to like screenshot this. This is just like what I mentioned before, all the details that are important to keep in mind when you're writing a method. And if you keep all these things in mind, I think you're pretty good off for others to understand what you're trying to do and for others to follow your method. But yeah, if there are any questions now, we can ask questions, or if not, we can jump into the last part where we will actually now start using protocols.io. I think this was the other link. And I think this group might also be interesting, right? Oh, and I think this had, I thought this had more protocols. But for example, this one has over 200 publications. So if I'm, for example, if I want to search for a publication in here, I would go to publications. And then here you can just search for a keyword, and then you will get the results for that. And if I, for example, I'll just click on this one now. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to create a fork of the protocol. So if you click on the protocol, if you have the protocol, the little downward arrow next to the title, if you click that, a drop-down menu will pop up like this. And then the third button down, it's called copy/fork. So what you want to do is you want to click on that. And then when you click on that, I think you will only have the option to create a fork. So you will create a fork. So you click make a fork. And you can select a folder. So I will put mine just in my personal files for now. So you can put yours in your personal files as well. So you select the folder. And then you can continue. And then it will ask you if you want to view the fork or if you want to edit a new fork. And so you want to click edit new fork. And so what a fork really is, a fork of a protocol is kind of like a version, but a fork you can create it of anybody's protocol. And like the version control that I showed you, that's really only for the person who originally published a method. But you can take anybody's protocol and really create your own version of it, because a lot of times there are things that you might need to adjust for your purposes. So maybe there are some reagents that you need to swap out, or some equipment that you might not have available. So at any time you can really create a fork of somebody else's protocol and then modify it to your needs. And I'm not sure why mine is so slow. Oh, now it worked. But so if you create a fork, it always starts out private, like any other protocol, but this will really give you like an editable version of the protocol that you just looked at. So this is your fork of somebody else's protocol now. And what you can do is now you can go in and you can make modifications and edits to this as needed. I'll even, like, you can maybe rename this. I'll call mine for Anita or something. So you know this is mine, so I'm like editing this. And then you can do things like here, for example, I see that they didn't put like the sections. So you could, for example, you could make the sections, you could add sections here, or you can use components. And you can add additional nodes, and you can really like edit this as you need to. And then in the materials, also, if you want to add materials, I wanted to show you quickly how you can add materials. So if you go to like the last tab on this edit view, here's where you can add all the materials. And so in this example that I'm looking at, they just put everything like the materials text, but you actually have the option to either search for materials. So if I want to search for something, I can search for something. And a lot of vendors, they give us their entire catalogs. So you can just search for like reagents by reagent name or by catalog number or by vendor. And you'll see that it makes these kind of cards. Or you can also create new reagents or new materials cards. So if you click this button, this green button where it says add new, you can click on that. And then you can put all the information. So you can put like the materials name, you can select the vendor, you can put a catalog number, you can put a store URL if there's one, put a CAS number, and here's where you can put an RRID. So if the material does have an RRID, this is where you would put it. And then if you do add an RRID here, it will be automatically connected to the RRID portal. So it will be automatically linked. So we'll detect that, and then so it will be made clickable, and then you can click on it and you can see it in the portal. So yeah, this is how you can add materials with RRIDs. But really, yeah, for the method, just the goal here is just for you to just get familiar now with the interface. And we can do this for like another 5 minutes, so you can just see if there's anything that you might need to, that you would swap out if you were about to do this method in your lab. If there's anything that you would like to change, you can change it. And then, yeah, let's do that for like 5 minutes, and then we can move on to the next part. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute or ask questions, or if there's anything you want me to show here, I can show anything here. But if you want to add components, like this one, I don't think it has many components, but you would just click wherever a component should go, and then you can click on these components here. So if I want to add an amount, you can add amount by just clicking the amount component button, or like a duration. And you can switch. So we have different things. So I know there are also 3 or 4 computational students here. So if you're doing computational work, you can also select the category computational for the components, and that will give you like a preset of all the computational kind of like components that you might need, like data set, command, software packages. And if you want to add little step icons, you can do that with this. There's like, if you look on the top of the editor in like the little, like the top line, there's a triangle with an exclamation mark. And if you hover over it, it will say mark a critical step. And this is what you can click to add like step icons. So there are a bunch. There's not everything, but if there's anything that would be interesting, you can add it like for computational steps, or like pause points, critical steps, analyzing steps, overnight steps, or optional steps. So if you want to do anything like that, you can add it. So here, if I could just like click on it, and you can select, I think, up to like 3. So I can say like these 2, for example. And then if you do want to add any, I know we don't want to add that now, but if in the future you want to add any videos or images, you can do that through these 2 icons. There's like an image. You can add an image or a video, or you can even add an embedded video. So if the video is very large, it might be better to put it onto YouTube or something, and then you can embed the media. So that means the YouTube link will just, for example, will just play, like it will just have like a little video already rendered, and you can just click on it and it will play. But for smaller videos, you can totally just insert them like that. And there's also, if you click on the right-hand side, there's a button that's like a circle, and it has like different color section, and this is like a completion status. So it really tells you like how much your protocol is optimized. And this is very similar to what I showed you for the good, like the best practices for writing protocols. If you click on that, you'll see if once you reach 100%, you should be all good, and you have a lot of details in it. But like, for example, like if you don't have an abstract, it will tell you should add an abstract and things like that. So for example, mine still here have like guidelines is red, so I don't have any guidelines yet, and I don't have any warnings yet. But this is a really good measure to look at. Right, so if you want to add a section, so this is for the section, and I named this section, actually it named everything, but for example, this should be the next section, right? Step 2 should be blood sampling methods. Let me copy this. So if you click on the step, and then you see this little checkbox, if you want to say step 2 should have a new section title, I will tick checkbox 2. And if it's a lot of steps, you can also do like right click, and you can select, you can have this, you can have like you can select multiple steps with this one where it says step selection. So if you could say, for example, step 2 till step 10 should be one section, this will make it quicker. Otherwise, you would have to individually click on every step. But basically, you select the steps that should be under one section, and then you click this button that says set section for selected steps. You can either click it here, or you also see it up here. It's the same thing. So I would click on that. And then here, I will just paste the section into here. Fine, I think this is the wrong one still. Let's just call this blood sampling. And then you put the name for the selected steps for the section, and then you just click save. And then it will be changed. So this is how you really set the section steps. And you can have, so this one only has like one step under each section. If it was me, I would actually, probably for this, I would create 4 individual steps here, because this is really 4 steps. And then it would all be purple, all under the first section. And then for this one, I think I would actually create a new step for each of these like points here for like A, B, C, D, all the way through K. I think I would create actually individual steps to make it easier to follow. So this one, the first one now that we did is we created a fork of somebody else's protocol. So somebody else already put in the main structure, and this is actually here. If you create a fork from a protocol, you will notice that it has this little title here under the title. So it will always link back to the original protocol that you forked it from. So you'll be able to see like where it came from. And And as I mentioned, this always starts out private, so I can see still mine is here private. But if you wanted to, you could actually now publish this. So you can either keep it private or you can publish your version of somebody else's protocol. You can choose whatever you want to do with it. But if you want to create your own new protocol, which we will do now, and I don't know, maybe some of you have protocols in mind that you might want to create, or you can, yeah, if you have a protocol sitting somewhere in a Google document, you can now just move it over to protocols.io. But to create a new protocol, you click New. So you click this New button on the left-hand side panel, and then you click on New Protocol. And then you will be asked where you want to put it into the folder. So I'll put just mine in my private files. But if you're part of any group, you can also put it into a group folder here. And then if you put it into a group folder, it will automatically be shared with everybody in that group. But when you create a new protocol from scratch, it will ask you, and mine is a little slow, I apologize for that, but it will ask you what kind of protocol you're creating. So you can create, you can select if you're doing computational or if you're doing wet lab stuff. So just select whichever protocol type you want to work on. And they all pretty much, the structure looks the same, but the components on the right-hand side will change a little bit depending on what you select. And then first thing you probably want to do is give your protocol a title, like the overall title. So this is not the step title, this is the actual protocol title. I'll just name mine example protocol for now, but you should put whatever title your protocol has. And then for the steps, if you do have already a protocol in like a step-by-step format, you can do a little shortcut here by clicking this button where it says insert steps from a text file. And if you click that, you can do a little shortcut because you can basically paste your steps into here. And I'll just do some dummy things here like ABC, but it's like not actual steps, but you can paste your steps here and then you can select each number is a step. And then you can click preview. And then it automatically will detect the different steps and you can add these to your protocol. So this can save you a little bit of time if you already have a step-by-step format protocol written out somewhere. And let's say, for example, so now I'm going to answer the question that was put in the chat again. If you say, okay, step A and step B are section 1, I could do right click and I can select steps by clicking this button, step selection. So I can say step 1 till step 2. I want to select them. So I selected them now. So you will see they're checked here. And then I can click this button where it says set section for selected steps. And then I can create, like, I can call this section 1, for example. And then these two steps will be grouped into one section. And I'm not sure again where it's, okay, here it is. And then you could, for example, say, okay, step 3 is a new section. So I could click on step 3, and then I could call this section 2, for example. And then, so here are your sections. And then if you do add new steps underneath, so if you want to do it manually, you can create, you can always add a new step here. So I can say new step, and then it will be added onto that new section, onto that section. Or if you want to create a new step that's a new section, you can click new section here. So here I would just click new section, and then I can create the new section. And then one thing I also wanted to mention here, sometimes we have protocols that branch off. So kind of like if you, for example, if you have methods that depending on what your sample is, like sometimes it's like, oh, if you have a frozen sample, you'll go this direction. If you have a fresh tissue sample, you'll go this direction. So sometimes we have like these branch points. So if you ever work on protocols that have these branch points, you can create those as well. We have like what we call a step case. So you'll find a little icon up here or down here. It's just called step case. And if you add that, that will allow you to create like such a branch point. So the steps can change depending on what you want to follow. So the reader can really select what they want to see. So if they want to select frozen or fresh or whatever, it might be like sample size, I don't know, they can select different things. Yeah, but then, so here's where you create your steps, and you can just navigate through all these 4 different tabs and just start filling out all the details for your protocol. You can add a little thumbnail image, that's always nice. And then here's where you put the abstract, you can put authors, keywords, you can put a manuscript citation if it is linked to a manuscript already. So you can add all these things. And then for the guidelines and warnings, so anything that's really not steps, I would put it into the guidelines. Anything that's just people should keep in mind, you can put it in the guidelines. And then for the warnings, if there's anything, like if you're working with any toxic reagents or anything like that, you can put it into that. And then the before starting section is for if anything needs to be done before somebody starts with a method. Oh, and one thing is actually, this one is also good. And if you go to the guidelines and warnings tab, there is a checkbox where you could check off sensitive content warnings. So if you're doing any like mouse stuff or anything that has like organs or blood involved, if you have any pictures, you might want to check this because that lets people know when they're opening your protocol that there might be some sensitive content. And then the materials I already showed before. So for materials, just feel free to create new materials and just add all the necessary details to your materials.